So we have, like, as I noted, 31 confirmed attendees. We have 9 attending so far. This is a joint informational meeting of Manhattan Community Board 4, Clinton Housing, and Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance regarding the proposed Paddys Market National Register Historic District along 9th Avenue from West 35th Street to West 40th Streets. I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, just to give a general info how this meeting works, and then we'll take it from there.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jesse Bodine. I'm the district manager from Manhattan Community Board 4. So we'll be here to hear a presentation by Clinton Housing Development Company on a proposal for national registry for the Paddys Market area. And so the presentation will happen. I'm gonna hand it off to the chair of our Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee to give some background to how this came about through our committee and then through the board. And then after that, we'll go into the presentation, and then we'll have Q&A at the end, whether it be raising your virtual hand there, which is at the bottom of your screen, or writing something in the Q&A, which is also a tab that you can use at the bottom of your screen. So that's it. I'll give a little background as to what a community board is, just in case someone doesn't know. We're Community Board 4, which we represent from West 59th Street down to West 14th Street, from the Hudson River all the way to 6th Avenue to 26th Street, and then we move a little bit farther closer west to 8th Avenue at 26th Street back up to 59th Street. And the community boards are every neighborhood in the 5 boroughs has a community board. And so they're all organized differently. We have a number of committees, Land Use Committee, Parks Committee, Housing Committee. And I welcome anybody that is not familiar with this Community Board 4 to please check out our website at MCB4.nyc, and I'll put that in the chat if that's available to people. And that's about it. So our roles are to review any application, land use application, any application from the city, and we're also there for the community to hear about what their concerns are and what their issues are. We submit a statement of district needs every year with budget requests. We hold monthly meetings with agencies to make sure services to the neighborhoods are being fulfilled, and along those lines. And so that's what we do. And so I welcome everybody to check our website out. All our meetings are public. We're doing all virtual meetings right now. So you can call in, you can use Zoom like here tonight, and please get involved. So now I'll hand it over to Jean-Daniel.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jean-Daniel Noland. I'm the chair of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use and Zoning Committee. And we have long been interested, along with the community, in preserving the history, the architectural and cultural history of our neighborhood. And that includes Paddys Market, the so-called Paddys Market, which is roughly from West 40th Street to, west of 35th Street to West 40th Street along 9th Avenue. A couple of years ago, the city council, in its generosity, gave the community board some money to spend, whatever they wanted to. So we said, we're going to hire a consultant, a historic preservationist, and do a report. And we hired Tony Robbins, who you may know. He issued a report on Hell's Kitchen north of 42nd and on Paddys Market. And the community board said, this is great. We sent it to the Landmarks Commission. We sent it to the New York State, what was it called? New York State
Historic Preservation Office.
District. That's right. Thank you, Joe. And we've had a lot of support, including from the great Historic Districts Council about our efforts. So tonight we're just going to hear about it, the application that Clinton Housing Development Company is going to submit, answer questions. Paddys Market started about in the 1800s, and that's about when I joined the board, and it lasted up until the 1950s when Joe joined the board. So this is a positive effort to celebrate our immigrant history and to preserve it as best we can. And Joe, thank you for setting this up with your team. I'll turn it over to you, Joe. Take it away.
So if you can put up the PowerPoint, Lindsay.
One
The
moment.
PowerPoint, yeah, sure.
Yep. Okay. How's that
So
look?
this is, first and foremost, I want to note, this is not a city landmarks district. It is a National Register Historic District that we are discussing tonight. And it is a joint effort of Clinton Housing with the assistance of the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen bid, and always working in conjunction with Manhattan Community Board 4. Next. Clinton Housing Development, for people who may not know, we work to develop affordable housing in the district. We work with all sorts of community initiatives, and we were founded in 1973. Next year will be in 2 years, our 50th anniversary. And we have developed over 1,000 units of affordable housing. We provide all sorts of technical assistance to block associations or community groups in various community efforts. Next. I think Jesse gave you the background on Community Board 4, but it's important for you to see actually the district map from 59th Street down to 14th Street, along 8th Avenue, west to the river, and then east to 6th Avenue below 26th Street. And this Community Board is a charter, part of the city charter. It is a city agency. There's a paid staff, and the rest are volunteers, so the 50 members of the board. Next. Patty?
Hi, everyone. My name is Patty Maltezos. I work for the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance. We are a business improvement district. There are 76 business improvement districts throughout the city. Our boundaries are from 42nd Street to 30th and from roughly 9th Avenue to 11th Avenue. We seek to improve the area for anyone who works here, lives here, visits here. And we do that by picking up the trash. We maintain public spaces, we plant trees, and many other things. This picture is showing a public art initiative that we did last year. We wanted to improve some vacant storefronts, hoping to drive some traffic and enliven the neighborhood. So that's an example of one of our programs that we do. If you can go to the next slide. There's a couple more. So one of the public spaces we maintain is Bella Abzug Park. It's a 3-acre public city park. We're the official maintenance and programming partner. We offer a ton of free programs there. We maintain the park, make sure it looks great, and it's expanding in the future. So we're gonna keep doing what we're doing there. Another program we did a planter giveaway. This is an example of a 9th Avenue business that we have a great relationship with, Vito Slices and Ices. The open dining program had a couple glitches, and we wanted to offer businesses assistance if they chose to do it. So we gave some planters away. And the next page shows some more of our programs. So you can see some of our awesome maintenance staff, a mural that we did on 37th Street a few years ago. You're probably familiar with a lot of the work that we do, but we're happy to be here to be a supporter and sort of co-sponsor of this program. We think it's a great opportunity, and we're happy to be here again.
Next.
Oh, some additional pictures. So you may have seen our cleaning crew out in the district. We, pick up trash, we remove graffiti, large items, things like that. We also have a bunch of these green planters you've probably seen with our native pollinator gardens in them. So more examples of programming and projects that we've done.
Next. Turn it over to Lindsay Peterson. Higginson Quaysbarth is a consultant engaged by Clinton Housing, working to develop the application for the proposed National Register Historic District. And they have done an incredible job, and will give you the full background of how a National Register District works, what it does and doesn't do. Lindsay?
Great. Thank you, Joe. So as Joe said, yeah, we're the historic preservation consultants, and we're starting to prepare we have prepared the National Register nomination. And as was said earlier, I just want to give credit that this is based on some initial research that was done by Tony Robbins, which we expanded upon and, wrote a nomination, but he laid a lot of the groundwork. So what I'm going to do is sort of just go over what the National Register of Historic Places is, how it's managed, how buildings or historic districts get listed on it, and then how Paddys Market fits into all of that. And then after that, my colleague Cass Stackelberg is going to give a bit of an introduction to some of the benefits of being listed on the National Register. So to start off, the National Register of Historic Places, the official list of historic properties recognized as significant in American history, architecture, engineering, or culture. The National Register emerged from the National Historic Preservation Act, which was passed in 1966. And this was really a response to the urban renewal projects of the 1960s, which had reshaped cities, and it was the reason many historic buildings were lost. Separately, there is a New York State State Register, which was also established in 1980, and they sort of run parallel to each other. The New York State Historic Preservation Office, more commonly known as SHPO, is the entity that coordinates both of these programs, the State Register and the National Register, in association with the National Parks Service as far as the National Register goes. Sorry, I said that in a very confusing way. So SHPO staff helps identify historic resources. They provide technical assistance, grants, and incentives, and they collaborate with communities to achieve local preservation goals. So in this case, Clinton Housing and our company have been coordinating with SHPO staff on preparing this National Register nomination. So what is a historic district? It's a group of buildings, structures, and sites that are significant for their historical and physical relationship to each other. Notably, properties in districts are not typically, it's not exclusively, but they're not typically individually historic. They gain meaning from their proximity to each other and their association to each other as a collection. And a district can include any number of properties, anywhere from 2 to hundreds. In this case, Paddys Market has 78 resources. 70 of those are considered contributing to the district, and 8 of those are considered not contributing to the district, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. So Paddys Market itself was established around 1885. That was the first documented mention of it that I found, at least, by Irish and German immigrant pushcart peddlers who lined 9th Avenue, stretching further than our district boundaries. So it was roughly 34th Street, 42nd, possibly for periods of time even north of that. But they lined it with their wares, with food items that they were selling. And it was really sort of a central feature of the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood that was supported and operated by people living in the neighboring tenements, mostly immigrant communities. But it was also, I found, a destination within the New York region. So people were coming from quite far away to come shop at Paddys Market. And it lasted until 1938. That was when Lincoln Tunnel had been completed, and the city, in a effort to ease traffic congestion, basically forced the market out. And even though the market closed, they tried to figure out ways to stay. It didn't quite work. But basically what happened is that Paddys Market came to refer to the stretch of international food stores and restaurants along 9th Avenue in the area of the former market. And all of this sort of culminated in the creation of the 9th Avenue International Food Festival in 1974. And for those who are sort of more knowledgeable about the National Register, that is the end of our period of significance. So it goes from 1885 to 1974. Those are the dates that are sort of considered important for this district. And just these quick photos, just for those who might be interested, this is at 9th Ave and 40th Street. So we're around 543 9th Ave, and here's 38th Street. And here's the newly minted Port Authority building, or the previous version of it. and an article from the food festival. And here are some historic maps, which also just are sort of to illustrate this history. In 1885, this whole area was a very dense neighborhood of tenements. And by 1955, there was really only, a smaller sliver of tenements left. What had happened was on the west side, infrastructure projects just blew through what had been complete blocks of tenement buildings. And on the east side, the garment center loft buildings were all built in the late 20s and 30s. And what is left today, no, I don't, the map is coming, but what is left today is basically what you see in this outline, which is the district boundary. So the National Register.
Just one note. So what we are referring to infrastructure is Lincoln Tunnel, Dyer Avenue, and the Oldie approaches. That's infrastructure.
That's, yeah, sorry if that wasn't clear. The criteria for evaluation. So how do you evaluate why Paddys Market is significant or should be listed? So it falls into different categories. The significant events or patterns of history, significant people, architecture, archaeology. Paddys Market falls into criterion A and criterion C. So broadly, the significant events or patterns of history, in this case, commerce and ethnic heritage. And then criterion C, architecture. This is a pretty intact collection of 19th century tenements. I think maybe, I can't remember if it's all of them, but all or except one are all 19th century. There aren't even later tenements. And then there's also a small collection of other building types, including row houses, commercial buildings. There's a church and a former stable. And here are the boundaries. And it should be noted that the boundaries are drawn both based on this history, but also on the current architectural integrity and physical setting that remains. So SHPO is really interested in integrity of block fronts and how it reads as a collection. And notably, I've also, you can see on here how it touches and interacts with the existing Garment Center Historic District. And then we have the individually listed McGraw-Hill building up there. Okay, some timeline milestones. Currently, we are here in October, November, community informational meetings. The next steps is that the final draft of the nomination will be sent to SHPO, and they will send out notification letters to property owners in January. SHPO staff will have a public meeting in February where they can continue to answer questions. The State Review Board will meet in March 2022, where they will decide whether it will be listed on the state register. And after that, they send it to Washington, D.C. to the National Park Service for final decision on whether it also gets listed on the National Register. So that's sort of where we are in timing. And so then to just start answering a few questions, what the National Register does not do. So this is really primarily an honorary designation and sort of helps protect properties from government action, not from their owners. So it does not restrict an owner's ability to remodel, alter, paint, manage, subdivide, sell, or even demolish if they so choose. And the National Register is also not local designation. So this is not the Landmarks Preservation Commission and does not require local review for changes. And that hopefully is self-explanatory. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cass to talk about some of the benefits.
Perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. And it's nice to be here this evening and talking about this really exciting opportunity for the neighborhood. So as Lindsay said, they're really, the National Register listing is largely an honorific title. Changes to buildings by individual owners require, or do not require any approvals, any review by the state. Private development can go on without any review, but there are some financial benefits that are available to owners for properties that are listed on the National Register, and that includes state and federal historic tax credits. So I can talk a bit about that. Let's go to the next slide. There's a program that's run through both the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. It's the 20% commercial rehab tax credit program. And there are sort of four criteria that have to be met to qualify for the credit. The value of the credit is 20% of all the hard and soft costs that go into a building's rehabilitation. So that can be quite significant on smaller scale projects as well as larger scale projects. And the criteria include the fact that the property has to be listed on the National Register. So through this process, all the contributing properties within the boundaries of the historic district will already qualify for the credit for the program. The rehab has to result in a property that is income producing. So that means the property would need to be used for rental residential purposes, commercial office, other kind of income producing uses for the property. The rehabilitation itself, there's what's called the substantial rehabilitation test, and the rehab has to be the greater of $5,000 or the adjusted basis of the property. And what that means is basically the value of the building less the land cost. So for properties that have been held for a long time, the depreciated value is probably quite low. So actually the threshold may not be that high to meet in order to qualify for the credit. And then the last criteria is that the work that's done has to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. And this is 10 very sort of general standards by which the National Park Service evaluates the proposed work. So those standards include things like, for remaining historic fabric, it's better to restore that material than to replace it in kind. It speaks to the scale of additions on buildings and how they should be compatible and secondary to the underlying historic building. There are other specifics about how restoration work can be done, and perhaps we'll put a link to the standards in the chat as well, so that people can just see what those general standards are. But it's a program that is used throughout the country. It's a federal program and is used quite a bit here in New York City, or New York State, I should say. And again, the program is run through the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. There is no involvement by New York City in the program at all. Next slide. As I mentioned, one of the considerations is the property has to be listed on the National Register, and in that consideration, it has to also be a contributing building within the historic district in which it's located. So on the bottom of the slide, you can see on the left a non-contributing resource within the property. So this is on the corner of 9th and 35th Street, this one-story taxpayer, and then directly adjacent, also on 9th Avenue, 452 9th, which is a contributing resource. There are 78 properties in the boundaries of the district. 70 of those are contributing. So in order to qualify for the tax credit program, the property needs to be one of those 70 contributing properties. Next. In addition to the historic tax credit program, there are grants that are available from the Environmental Protection Fund through the state that can be used to carry out preservation program projects at individual buildings, restoration, etc. So we can perhaps include some website links as well in the chat to help people find their way to those programs. Next. I'll go ahead and continue with this. I think there really are no restrictions for privately owned properties within that are listed on the National Register. As we said before, a property owner can alter, even demolish a property that's on the National Register without any oversight by SHPO, the Park Service, really just local regulations. So I know there are limitations sort of within the district that Joe can speak to about demolition, but just in terms of modifications to buildings, there are no requirements for review or permitting once a property is listed on the register. Next. So, right, does this mean you can make changes to your building? Yes, well, sorry, the question is, does this mean I won't be able to make changes? And no, you are able to make changes to your building as a private property owner, as we've said. Next. Lindsay, do you want to speak to this as a sort of process oriented and ties into the timeline?
So in January, when the letters are sent out to owners, there is an option for owners to object to listing. They only get one vote, and I believe to do that, you would have to notarize that you are the owner and send it back to SHPO. But that is an option. If more than 50% of owners object, then it would not be listed.
The overall district, just to sort
the
of
overall
clarify.
District, sorry, yes.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah.
just opt out like one building. It's the sort of an all or nothing.
And the short answer here again is no. It's like there is no effect of the listing on property taxes or zoning. It's really independent and has no bearing on those local actions.
So I want to speak though to other restrictions that we have that exist today. And I'll answer the question in the chat in a second. So we are in a unique position though. Our community in this portion of 9th Avenue is part of the Hudson Yards Special Zoning District. And in fact, where it says D4 and D5, any residential building in these blocks by local zoning under the New York City zoning resolution is prohibited from demolition. Not a commercial building, not a one-story building, it's a taxpayer. So if this were a landmarks district, everything's prohibited from demolition and prohibited from alteration. In this case, it is entirely tied to the local zoning. So what are the benefits that come besides the tax credit and the grants? One of the things we're looking at as a neighborhood is the neighborhood has been severely affected by COVID and lots of closures of ground floor stores. In working with the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen bid, we talked very much about marketing and being able to get focus on this part of 9th Avenue to get it restored to what it was. The Paddys Market Historic District gets identity and enables the folks at the bid who have a whole marketing function and promoting the neighborhood function to work. Next. Tax credits and financing. So this district came about because the community board had done a study, and then specifically Clinton Housing, which owns this corner on 40th Street and 9th Avenue, sought to see if we could use historic tax credits as a part of financing for renovation of this affordable housing complex on the corner of these 7 buildings. And in fact, the State Office of Historic Preservation came to us and said, having read the Robbins report, that a district was better because there was such a matter of history here. I would encourage everybody to look at the link that's been put in the chat regarding the building history and what's happened in the district. It's amazing how really a handful of families developed portions of buildings over a period of time, and then they became this major food center for not just the West Side, but for the entire city. Next. So the district so far has received letters of support from Manhattan Community Board 4, from the Hudson Yards Health Kitchen Alliance, from the Borough President, Gail Brewer, our Assemblymember Gottfried, and Speaker Corey Johnson, along with our State Senator, Brad Hoylman. Next. I'm going to go to Q&A, but I have one specific question that's been asked. Building owners and shop owners, we have been both flyering 9th Avenue, sending out letters to all of the building owners, and as part of the form, that's just prior to the formal process starting. When the formal process starts, every building owner will have a letter sent to them again, specifically about this process starting formally. And we've hosted 2 meetings so far. This is our second. The first one was just a property owners meeting about 2 weeks ago. And now this is our community informational meeting for the broader community. So we're going to keep on going back and forth on this. And we're at the point now of Q&A. So anyone who would like to speak or has a question, please raise your virtual hand and we will bring you over to the panel to be able to speak. So I see nobody raising a hand yet. I have never been in a community meeting where no one has a question. Kat Lafferty, I'll bring you over to speak. If you can pull down the presentation. Okay. Yes, Kat, you can speak.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you to the amazing team for their presentation. My name's Kat. I've lived in Hell's Kitchen for 22 years, north of the Paddys Market area, but I love the stores in the Paddys Market area and the architecture. And my question is, what is the timeline in terms of finding out? And do you have some programming ideas in terms of, I don't know, including Paddys Market in a more southern 9th Avenue Food Festival, or, you know, having photo exhibitions or talking about who the major, you know, exhibitions of who the major families were and what it was like in 1850s through 1934 Hell's Kitchen. And are we sure that the name will be Paddys Market?
So the first on the timeline, the official process will start in January and will go through May of 2022. That's the entire process through the state and the National Park Service, which administers historic districts, and the National Register. For the question of how we proceed ahead and what we can offer, we really want to work hand in hand with the bid, especially now because we look at this not only as a way for our community identity, but help COVID recovery and how do we get this thing to work together. So that's something that we want to develop jointly with the bid in the public meetings the bid has to develop a program on how to promote this. The next thing is how do we find out about the future, I mean, the history and whatever. Clinton Housing operates a building at 545 West 52nd Street, which is a 10-story arts building. We have a ground floor gallery. We had done a short gallery show on history of the neighborhood. As part of this work in 2022, we will do a gallery show on Paddys Market at that location with the photos and the background, and really invite people from the neighborhood to be involved in that process. And the last thing on Paddys and the name of the Paddys Market, we did a lot of research back and forth. We talked to a lot of different people about the word Paddy, meaning for Irish folks, Paddy. And it turns out there are Paddys markets all over the world. I did not know this. And Lindsay, where do we find them? Like in Australia, in South Africa?
Sydney, Cork, Ireland. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, there's several. I think in Australia it still exists and
right. So
it's still a market. Yeah.
It's really remarkable to think that this was very much about immigrants going to places, establishing a market, and the name became an honorific to stay on. I've also checked into the Irish Art Center. No one feels offended about Paddy. They feel that it's part of history. So I think it is the historic name, and that's why we're going to be continuing to work with it.
Thank you.
JD, sorry.
Yeah, Joe, I had a question. As you know, Port Authority is going to build a new terminal. This is an opportunity for all the folks along 9th Avenue, especially businesses, to start thinking about that. It could be a great benefit to them to work with Port Authority. What do you think?
Yeah, this is something that has just started to be talked around. Remember, the Port Authority, both the new terminal on the place of the existing one, and then the new intercity bus terminal, which will be west of 9th Avenue between 40th and 39th Streets, just west of Metro Baptist Church over to 10th Avenue, the whole reconfiguration of all the ramps, will be adjacent to this new historic district. As part of the national, the environmental impact statement, the district will be considered as part of it and what the impact is. And I believe the community stands to have the ability to work with the Port Authority to support the district, to support the businesses there, really, because this is going to be a transformational thing that happens. The new bus terminal built over a period of 10 years will take all buses off the streets. They will only be on ramps in and out of the tunnel. So that means we have a whole future to look forward. And this is a very important effort that we can do to really stabilize 9th Avenue and to create, really reestablish the commerce that was there. Thank you, Kat. Brian Weber, bring you over next.
Hi all, calling in from an undisclosed location. How is everyone doing? That was a fantastic presentation. I just want to say I see nothing but upside from this endeavor. I think it's something that 9th Avenue could definitely benefit from and the community could benefit from. And I just wanted to follow up on one thing. Lindsay, during the owners meeting 2 weeks ago, you said that you had received some initial feedback. Can you comment on that and let the attendees know where things stand with that?
Sure. So I think Joe already mentioned this, but as part of sort of some of the work on the potential tax credit he's working on for his project, we had to submit the entire National Register nomination to SHPO, who then sent it down to the National Park Service. And they have, through this process, already determined the district eligible for listing on the National Register. And this is, you know, pretty much a blessing that they're ultimately going to list this, that they don't, I did not receive any comments, questions, anything like that from the National Park Service. So that's a sign that they're happy with the boundaries, with the significance that was written and the description. And so it's good news, and it means it's already in actually a really good place.
I guess that was my question. What exactly
Yeah.
does eligible mean in the process? And does eligible mean they are leaning towards this, or is that a portion of the process?
So things can be determined eligible, you know, through lots of different processes. Cass, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but I believe through
you're right.
even environmental, you know,
Impact
environmental surveys,
Right.
you know, things become eligible. Whether someone goes through the next step of
To designate.
listing it, yeah,
Mhm.
is a whole different story. So, you know, the fact that it's determined eligible at this moment already means it does have, you know, a base level of protection, because it has to be assessed already now as an eligible resource in, you know, anything that happens in the vicinity. But going forward and listing it, you know, gives you the rest of the benefits.
So I think a really
So-
good example is that we'll have massive construction in the neighborhood immediately adjacent to an historic district by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey for the new terminal approaches and all sorts of things. The Port Authority will have to protect the residential buildings along 9th Avenue in a much more heightened way to make sure there are no problems with impacts from the construction, for example. And that's something that is very important to our neighborhood, because with a large infrastructure project, easily a foundation could be undermined, there could be a problem, whatever it is. There will have to be an actual plan for protection in the Port Authority bus terminals plans on how the buildings get protected. That's something we had not thought about until like 2 weeks ago, Brian.
Right. And I think that's an important thing to, I don't want to say selling this to the community, but I think it's a very important thing for the community to be aware of, that protection and that sort of will be undertaken by the Port Authority.
As a requirement.
Yeah, as a requirement.
They're doing, as Cass Stockelberg said earlier, it protects an area from public action, right? So
Right.
if there's a public action that could cause damage, they have to show how they're going to protect it.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? I'll just call out names, and if you are not able to raise your hand, you just let me. I have Ann Oust, Barbara Eastman, Beth Morrison, Michael Noble, Patricia Taylor, Sarah Mill, Simeon Bankoff, Tiffany Henkel, and Tom Kaler. Anyone have any interest in asking a question or speaking or commenting? I don't see anyone raising up. I see a panelist raising. Oh, there's, yes, Kat and then Jesse.
Thanks again, Joe. One quick question is, are there potential plans for some landscaping or for some common areas? Because I feel like it would be fabulous in this area to have some outdoor public seating, even if in small courtyardy kind of ways. I feel like that's something that's lacking in the area.
So as part of the Port Authority bus terminals reconstruction, there will be 2 large parks of, I think, 2.5 acres, roughly the size of Bryan Park, being built as part of that plan. However, that will be built at the end of the project. So from a broader community point of view, we're trying to figure out where they can build something at the beginning of the project, not only at the end. The idea of a park 10 years from now, we want to have more gray hair, but we want to have somebody use it in the first 10 years also. So I think that's going to be hand in hand.
I was also thinking though, something that might emulate a cart, an outdoor setting that might just give a little sample of what Paddys Market might have looked like. So
That'd be very interesting.
That's just food for thought.
Yes. Simeon?
Let me unmute myself. Hi, I just wanted to sort of, I don't really have much to say except to congratulate the team and Community Board 4 in moving forward with this. I think it's really terrific that something that you were talking about for such a long time is really moving towards fruition. I was kind of curious, I remember in the original Robbins report, there was also something further to the south, as I recall, and is that sort of a phase 2, or we'll deal with that when we get there kind of situation?
Actually, further to the north.
Oh, further to the north, okay.
Yes. Yeah, we haven't, I mean, the mother lode of all immigrant historic districts is a portion of Hell's Kitchen above 42nd Street. And this is our first effort in as a community with all these various folks coming together to start something off. And we'll have to see how this proceeds and then talk about how the community can work together for the northern part of Hell's Kitchen.
Definitely. Also just and I'm sure you've done this, but you might want to look at the folks over at the Belmont bid up in on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, because they're working towards potentially creating a historic district, but really marketing an entire, they work very closely in marketing their area as a commercial area, as a food area, and as sort of a historic food area. And they've got some really interesting statistics that might be helpful.
And they are a bid also, right? Isn't that a bid up there too?
Yep. It's all through the Belmont Avenue bid.
Right.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they're great people.
That'll be definitely part of our joint effort as we figure out how to really promote the identity of the food here. Jesse, you had your hand up?
I just wanted to go back to the timeline a little bit, and I apologize if we mentioned it in particular, but obviously, like you said, this is just to make sure that everybody that's from the public is on this, that they'll be going what the next public conversations are like. I think you touched on them briefly on the timeline, but I just want to make sure we all know that there'll be more public conversations happening.
So letters will go out to owners in January. In the first quarter of the year, Lindsay will schedule an official meeting with SHPO representatives, correct?
Yeah, roughly in February sometime.
Right. So there'll be at least a month of notification and then another public meeting like this. And again, we don't know, will it be in Zoom or not? Who knows? We'll have to figure this out as we go through. I brought over Michael Noble from Community Board for next speaker.
Yeah, I'm here, Joe. I just want to chime in and mention this, Simeon, that bid up there in Belmont is really coming along. And I've been looking at it because it's so interesting, and they've done a great deal of work up there. And it's a heck of a thing, So thank you for bringing that up. And we should follow it.
Yeah, no, they're great people, and The head of the bid, and I've lost my brain completely, used to work closely with Mayor Bloomberg and has, and he's also a third generation baker and the whole 9 yards. They're very
Exactly.
sweet, very professional.
Exactly. Thank you.
Question in the chat that I'm responding to, but I'll also speak to it. Those projects include affordable housing. In fact, the immediate benefit will be 34 units of affordable housing that exists on West 40th Street on the northwest corner of 9th Avenue. That was renovated originally in 1996. That will have additional renovation now, and they will benefit from the 20% historic tax credit and be preserved for another 30 years. Any other questions from anybody? Jesse, do you want to just close any kind of thoughts, you or JD?
I'll defer to JD, the wordsmith.
Joe, thank you, and team for that extraordinary presentation. This is such a positive effort, makes us all proud. Well done, and any support the board can give or our electeds, let us know. We can ask them to support it even more.
I just want to thank members of the public tonight for attending, and we will continue this conversation after the first of the year, and it will be discussed further both at the community board and at the bid in details of how this proposal will move ahead. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good job, Joe.
I think we did pretty good here, right?
Yeah. Very good.
I was expecting a few more people, but I think we have it felt very clear, professional balance, right?
Mm-hmm. No,
And I
100%.
love Lev. I love Lev looking at the pictures.
I couldn't tell because I didn't know that you could see that.
I was like, all of a sudden I'm gonna go, Lev.
From my view, you only saw the speaker, so I was like, I assumed everybody's just looking at the speaker. You probably there as the host, you could see me. Yeah, no, we'll have to build off this. We'll work.
I'm
harder.
disappointed that we had 31 and only 19 showed up or something.
Yeah, well, I gotta say that's not. Normally 50% drop off isn't too bad, but
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll have to shake the grass next time. But I think you got some key people there. I saw Tiffany was there, Brian Weber was there, right? You had Simeon was great. That's great to have Simeon. So
Yeah, it's funny because now Dan Hinkle, Tiffany's husband's on my board, right?
oh, okay.
But they've been very nervous about the whole historic thing, and because they really want to redevelop and work to get the church renovated.
Sure.
And I said to them over and over, because beyond the church, the whole program space that's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said for the longest time, just like I said to the principal of PS 51, we're going to get you a new school, no matter what.
Yeah.
I said, Tiffany, the Port Authority is going to put an elevator in one of those bell towers. That's all there is to it, because this is a major community resource it's not fucking ADA, right?
Yeah.
And if everything's in the historic district, they're going to be able to access a 20% historic tax credit that
It's gonna work out.
for 40th Street alone, we're bringing in close to $1 million. For Harley House, it's well over like $1.5 million or $1.3 million or $1.5 million.
Fantastic.
So that's, I think this is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I guess the other part I always think is that everyone's going to get nervous because they think it's going to be landmark. But the truth is, you can't demolish anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now they could sell the church and demolish it. They're never going to do that. But
Yeah, that's obviously a much longer route.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right. Thank you. And how did your 30th Street meeting go? So I wanted to ask you.
I think it went fine. I think overall, I'll say this the same thing I said to them, which is I think their overall is just a we want it. I think the big takeaway, the big ask of you guys will be to come up with something, come up with a way of communicating on a regular basis, giving them a little bit of space and time to report their issues. You know, a lot of this stuff was, apartment focused, like unit per unit stuff. And I
Really?
said,
We haven't heard any of that at all.
yeah, well, see, that's what I'm saying. I can't, that's where we're like, the not having you guys in the room is always difficult, because it's like, well, that's interesting. I mean, it is all sort of connected. The two things that I think I took away was, one, they did say, which is not in the original letter, which I said, listen, that it wasn't listed in the original letter, was saying that the current heat situation is not sufficient. I
Haven't
don't
heard
know,
that at all.
but yeah, I know. And I said, listen, that wasn't in the letter. Like, how can I go after Joe if you're concerned about last year? I get it. And I said, you acknowledge that you guys have to follow up with the reimbursements, and they were going to do so.
Right.
But that, the heat being insufficient now is news to us. I will say, if you're 80 something years old and in New York City you're gonna, it's a cold city.
Yeah, I wanted to say that there was an element there. There are ladies who want to sit in their tank tops.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think we want to talk. I think Maria's gonna take away from it was that she's gonna want to talk to you about, there's got to maybe some way of allowing controlled, safe access to the computer room or something along those lines. I don't know, or at least a timeline for that. I'm just letting you know that's where I think she's.
I know. This is like it's across all of our buildings.
I know. I'm just letting you know. But I think my big thing was to say, like, listen, I think we need to have routine conversations, manageable, not hours long, not at night, kind of like a real kind of like, here's an agenda, here's things that you have an update on, here's things that you're working on.
Kind of a monthly meeting with the building manager, and periodically with Ryan, myself.
Yeah, I said, I'll be happy. And they're really concerned with, that we're going to set that up and then nothing's going to ever happen about it. And I said, if it's during business hours, I'll happy to attend. I did get them to commit. I did let them commit to Zoom. And I said, listen, at the end of the day, we're all trying to be safe, and it's it allows us to go to these meetings. So if